Hi guys, Kat here, talking about my MS journey. It's been 4 years since I last posted about this, and so I'm sorry that it's been such a long time since I followed up. Last time I talked to you all, I was doing really, really good. I had established a routine where things were working out, and I had gotten my pain rather low. Mobility training was huge, and maintaining my pain levels for the most part with my MS hug, and I had gotten to a point that my energy was a lot better. Well, not that long after that video, later in that year, beginning the next year, somewhere around there, I got sick and I had a relapse, and I started having breathing difficulties. And it took a very long time to figure out what was going on. They thought it was asthma, but then it wasn't responding to asthma medications, and they thought it was this and that, and they looked at my heart, and anyway, in the end, it turns out that it's essentially my diaphragm gets overly tense, and essentially spasticity of my diaphragm. So, this has been a big struggle over these last several years, because it increases my fatigue levels. I yawn a lot, and when I push myself too hard, I get really bad dyspepsia, or I don't know if that's the right way to say it, breathing trouble. I feel like I can't get a full breath, so I basically try to yawn, and can't completely yawn over and over and over again. And at its worst, it happens like hundreds of times an hour, and I'm absolutely miserable, and I feel like I'm struggling. Thankfully, PT has been huge for that. I have a great PT that has been working with me a long time, and that had tied my pelvic floor dysfunction to my diaphragm a little bit. And anyways, I essentially get manual therapy every 2 weeks to help so I can keep breathing, and the dyspepsia, or the struggles with my breath, don't get too bad. I also have a special bed that helps prop me up at night, that helps with the breathing a little bit. Most of my strategy is just spoon theory and doing less, and as long as I don't do too much in a day, I do okay. I can get a couple of hours of working in crafting, or thinking, or maybe making a video, or editing a video. And then I teach a few times a week, mobility stuff. I keep trying to add more. Every time I add more mobility work, I start to struggle, or when I add more physical work stuff to my week, I start to struggle. So it's been kind of a frustrating thing for me, as someone who's very motivated to be active, to be forced to do less to be able to function. Aside from the diaphragm issues, I have some additional persistent numbness in my hands that feels like squeezing on these couple of fingers. Persistent numbness in the bottom of my feet, and also a section of my back that intermittently goes numb. I still have struggles with my bladder. PT and massage and that sort of stuff helps maintain my bladder, but I essentially have to go a lot, because if I don't go when I feel I have to go and I try to hold it, it goes into really bad spasm, and then I have trouble going and a lot of pain. So the bladder thing has been a journey as well. Again, like I said, lots of PT stuff has helped with that. Again, mostly like manual therapy, massage kind of stuff. And mostly what I do to maintain my bladder is a self-massage technique. And I do have a video on that on my YouTube that I believe is accessible on Bendy Pixie Flexibility. I'll see if I can link it in this video just in case you all are interested, if I can remember to do that. I'm going to pause this really fast so that I write that down or I'll forget. My brain's just not as on task as I'd like. Okay, I did that, so. Bladder stuff. I've also had some brainstem lesions which have caused some dizziness issues, some severe vertigo at points that resolved, and then some intermittent dizziness issues. So like I really struggle with my stability when I'm tired. So like if I do a class or perform or do some sort of physical activity, or if I've done a lot mentally in the day compared to normal for me, then I just start to have a hard time with my balance, and you'll see me sort of like leaning and swaying and taking steps back and things like that when I'm trying to stand still. Other things, haven't really had issues with trigeminal neuralgia come back. Really haven't had issues with the tinnitus come back. Not persistently like they were. So I still kind of attribute that to gabapentin. Also, the really, really bad brain fog and the really, really bad narcolepsy were also gabapentin related. But I have had a recurrence of fatigue issue with those narcoleptic moments. And I'm currently exploring some options with CPAP to see if it can help. Unfortunately, so far it doesn't seem to be doing anything except making my apneas worse, but it's a whole thing to go through that process to see if we can get that under control. It wasn't super severe, so it might not even help my fatigue, but it's a thought. Other things, I don't deal with stress well. I don't deal with emotional stuff particularly well. I get overwhelmed really easily. I still have tremor issues, although some magnesium every night has helped a lot with the tremors. And my exercise intolerance, where I had a hard time when my heart rate would get high, has gotten a little bit better with verapamil extended release every night. It does make me feel kind of dizzy and weird when I take it if I'm awake, so it's good to take it just at night. And that has actually helped with when I exercise, my heart rate doesn't spike as quickly, and it returns to normal faster. Although the more times I spike it, the more time it takes to recover each time, it feels like. So there's sort of a point of diminishing returns where it continues to spike and then it spikes more easily, so I just kind of have to stop at that point. Still have all my mobility. Great thanks to, I think, all my training and commitment to mobility work. I do 3 hours a week of mobility work that I teach, and then when I feel like I can and I have enough spoons, try to do another extra bit, 30 minutes to an hour for myself each week. It doesn't happen every week. Meds, aside from the magnesium and the verapamil. I guess the other thing that I started having happen was last year, beginning of 2025. I started having what has now been diagnosed as autonomic dysreflexia, or complicated autonomic dysreflexia. essentially my heart rate would spike suddenly, my blood pressure would spike, I would start to feel kind of a little dizzy and then really overwhelmed, and I need to lay on the floor, and I would start flushing in my upper body, like turning really red, and I would start profusely sweating pretty much over my whole body. And then I would recover and it would get better. Well, that started happening, and I thought maybe the first time it was food poisoning, and then the first time I thought maybe it was just hormones. And then the second time it happened, I vomited. And I was like, okay, maybe it was some sort of food poisoning. Well, then the third time it happened, it was more severe. And it happened while I was at my PT's office. And I started profusely vomiting and couldn't get off the floor. Every time I try to move, it's like I can't coordinate my movement properly, so I just have to lay on the floor and like sweat and pant and try to stay calm until things resolve. Anyway, after about an hour of vomiting on the floor and whatever, things got better, and I went home after the PT appointment. I went and talked to a neurologist. It happened again. This time was at home. And then I started to realize it was happening once a month, every month, and right around my period, just before my period, was more severe episodes, sometimes towards the tail end, less severe episodes. So I think my period was setting it off. So I increased the amount of hormones that I was on for the endometriosis, and started doing the verapamil, and decided it was time for an MS med. My last 2 years in a row, there was new lesions in my brainstem, or my brain, or my spinal cord. So I, having had 2 new lesions in my spinal cord, 2 new lesions showing up in my brainstem, and a new lesion showing up in my brain, it was time to try meds again. So I have started ocrevus. I had my first 2 half doses, and I had a reaction to the first dose, but it was, I would say, pretty mild. They counted it as moderate because it was apparently multi-system, or I don't know exactly, but essentially my ears got itchy and red and started to swell slightly. And they stopped the meds, gave it a little time, things continued to progress, they got more itchy, they got more red, they administered additional anti-reaction meds, and then I was fine, made it through the rest of the infusion, but slower, again, to go through. And then the next half dose, and then I got home, and that evening I had another episode of the exact same thing with my ears and itching, and thankfully I had Benadryl on hand in case of infusion reaction, and apparently that's good to have because I had an additional reaction, and like I said, it's the same thing, so I took Benadryl and it subsided. So far the ocrevus has had no real ill effects. It hasn't affected me positively or negatively. I don't have daily symptoms from it. I had symptoms around the infusion. I felt like absolute garbage for about 2 weeks after the first one, and then I did another one, and then I felt like garbage for a little while longer. But once I'd recovered from the infusion process and the initial doses, I haven't had any additional thing that I could consider side effects from the drug. And the intermittent numbness in my back is the only thing that's new since I started the ocrevus. No more progression on my brain so far. Have not checked the rest of things until after the full dose infusion, which is actually tomorrow. So hopefully that goes well, and I will try to remember to do another update once I've recovered from that on how that went. So far, I would recommend ocrevus. It seems like it's probably preventing new lesions, and it seems as though it has a lot less side effect burden, being a once every 6 months drug rather than a daily or monthly dose. Yeah, so that's where we're at. Most of my ability to function is spoon theory and trying to not do too much per day. Try to keep my stress low, my anxiety down. I do get stressed a little bit overly easily, and when I do, it flares those symptoms extra. Makes my breathing worse, makes my bladder worse, makes my neuropathy worse, makes my brain fog worse. PT is huge. Please move. Find a PT that doesn't fear manual therapy, because manual therapy is huge when you have spasticity issues, to help kind of shut it down. And getting it shut down every couple of weeks makes all the difference, because for me at least, it builds and it gets bad and it calms down. But every time it calms down, it never goes as low as it was the previous time. And if I don't do that every couple of weeks, it's really bad with my breathing. I have a little spirometer, one of those things that you breathe into with the little ball. And if I don't have my every 2 weeks PT, I get down to like less than 500 capacity on that thing, breathing in. Whereas when I get to therapy, I can get up to 2,500, 3,000 again. On the very, very rare, I do have the occasional day where I just have no diaphragm issues, no hug pain, and everything is immaculate. That's happened maybe like 5 days in the past 6 years, so it's not a common thing. But when that happens, I can pull a full like 5,000 on the spirometer, no problem. So definitely, it's nice to have that. Spirometer is a feedback tool of what I'm struggling with is measurable and somewhat more legitimized, because breathing issues are hard to define, and when it's spasticity, it doesn't really show up except for excessive tension and difficulty with moving. But breathing exercises and stuff can help too. So anyway, I'm sure there's something I've forgot in here, but this is my update for now. And if you have questions, I will try to be better about answering them this time around. I really hadn't paid attention to any of those on those videos, but somebody did ask about an update and how I was doing now. So on ocrevus now, still doing okay, but really only because of limiting myself, and hoping for the best with this ocrevus journey, and I'll keep you in the loop, or try to keep you in the loop a little bit better going forward. Alright, if you made it all the way to here, congratulations, you're a boss. I can't believe you made it through an 19-minute video. But thank you for your interest, and I hope it helps somebody. That's the reason I do these. It's difficult when you struggle with disability, especially invisible disabilities. Like, everything that I deal with is pretty much invisible from the outside, although there are measurable things to demonstrate there are struggles. You as a whole on the outside can't really see that looking at me. All my invisible illness warriors, I feel you, I got you, and I love you, and take care of yourselves. We'll talk again.